Thanks so much for that really, really warm introduction, Nathan. Such a pleasure, always. So, starting with your brand purpose. So, many of you know this reference point. It's Simon Sinek, and he talks a lot about starting with the why you show up to work every day, why your company does what it does, and truly like why it matters and why it's important. In the world. And so your brand purpose is really connected to why everyone should love you. And so I'd love to start the conversation with what's a brand that you love and can't live without? Can I get a courageous volunteer to just belt it out? Maybe just which one? Sorry? Okay, Tinder. Okay, let's take Tinder for a second. Because that's how we're rolling today, Tinder. So what about Tinder is it that you can't live without Tinder? Come on, you have to. Nintendo, okay, Nintendo. What is it about Nintendo that you love and can't live without? Nostalgia, okay. It's universal. It's fun. It's friendly. And then specifically, Dan, like why does Nintendo matter to you?
I don't have a lot of fun in my life. I mean, it's fun.
Okay, good. Awesome. So the big opportunity with every brand is that when brands embrace empathy, so deeply understanding what customers need, like Dan needs fun in his life, and compassion. So it's never enough to stop at empathy and understanding what people need. It's important to respond to that with value. So with Nintendo, they're responding to the need for love by making these, the need for fun, by making these universal and really, really accessible games. And then the last bit here is intimacy, and you might think that that's a funny word to use, but really it's relationship. You know, when you think about Nintendo, I'm so glad that came up. My husband is a diehard Nintendo fan. He's got everything from that like red gun shooter thing with like the ducks and the glove, and like when we were in Tokyo, he was just like, well, I just got to get to I think they have like a headquarters there. They don't let you actually go in, but he just went to basically bow down outside of the office, and the guard like allowed him to like basically took a photo of him in front. Anyways, you know, Nintendo is so much a part of his life. It's how he learned to read so quickly. He was reading those thick manuals of like how to learn. So intimacy is relationship. Like my husband has a relationship with Nintendo. So these are the brands that build true love. And most of my talk today is basically going to be about love. And I love this quote about, from Airbnb, that it's better to have 100 people that love you than 1,000,000 people that like you. And so you've probably seen this a ton, but the brand equals the product equals the brand. This is super important for everyone in this room working on design systems because they're not dissimilar things. Everything that the customer or the user experiences is touching the brand. And so the opportunity for Indeed, I'm going to be talking today just about our own personal experience, just to share how this applies. So for us, we've got like the most job seekers, the most jobs in the world, tons of jobs data, millions of transactions per day. So this deep intelligence for job seekers and employers. And so our big question is, how do we pivot from someone just coming only for like this emergency room experience of I need a job, I hate my boss today, and then they get it and they go away, or I need a candidate and I come to Indeed, I get the candidate and I kind of go away. But how do we get to a relationship of when I think about my career, I think about Indeed, or when I think about building my team, I think about Indeed. So those are just very different engagement models. So one is quite transactional, the other is transformational. And so what I bring to my company is this talk of like building love, empathy, compassion, and intimacy with data. Indeed is obsessed with data. We've built our own tools to measure, A/B test, and so I'm just bringing in that other half of it, which is love. So design systems are built with love. Every detail, everything that you put into the design system, it is cared for. This is a labor of love. But sometimes, depending on the maturity level of your company, you need to almost have a design transformation first, just to even get buy-in, depending on where you are and where you're at. And different, when I talk about design maturity, there are different levels. So for level 1, for example, it's, the design dark ages. There is no design. Level 3 is like design as a service. And then like level 5 is design as a strategic partner, design thinking embedded within every facet of the company. But design transformations start with love. So love needs to actually start internally before it can be felt externally. So before Nintendo could do all of those things that light up inside of my husband's life and everybody that shouted out here, they had to internally believe this, believe their purpose and live it. So Design Ed Indeed, how did we start our transformation? So we've grown, quadrupled in size in just about 2 years. And in the last 2 years, we've set up studios all over the world and different practice areas. And so as we've been growing, we've been adding more specialty areas. So I'll talk about this briefly. Brand systems, which is focused on identity, so colors, type, et cetera. Design systems, so applying a specific brand language to components to have a full stack design system. Content strategy, so applying the voice and tone that gets developed from brand systems across the whole organization and the whole experience. Design engineering, so that is such a critical part of everything that we do. It's the reason we've been able to move as fast as we have. It's part DT, some like design technology, so rapid prototyping, part UX dev, where we're looking at UI code, but the whole thought is owning fit and finish, which is pretty unique and special. Discovery and insights, how do you take research and translate it to insights-based experiences? Research, qual, and quant. And what I love about research is like we're trying to change the definition of what being analytical means. So being analytical doesn't have to mean just an A/B test. For us, it's changing it to be every available insight. So A/B tests, marketing results, qual, quant. Then design ops, arguably the practice area that I really, really wish started first and not last. When you've quadrupled in size, you wish you had some infrastructure. And then lastly, 2 more, inclusion and ethics. How are we removing bias from our products every day, and how are we starting to think about that work? That's fairly new. And then product design. So how do we centralize and align around how we create products? So our mission, we help people get jobs. And then I've actually been doing a lot of research on this, this practical philosophy, Japanese philosophy called Iki Guy. And it basically states that everyone has a reason to jump out of bed in the morning. And it's really finding that purpose in the middle. So I think beyond helping people find jobs, it's really helping them tap into what's really important to them. Maybe they're getting paid for something that they're great at, but they're trying to figure out, how can I do something that the world needs, or something that I kind of love a little bit more? Or I'm loving it, the world needs it, but I'm trying to figure out, how can I get paid, And so it's tapping into this purpose. The job search, is really one of life's most stressful moments. It is up there with divorce, and it's significantly higher than being trapped in an elevator. Everyone in this room is super privileged, myself included, when we think about all of the opportunities that we have. But there's so many people that are really, really trying to figure out what's next and have no idea. And so even for us, in our privilege, it's still hard for us to figure out, do I take this opportunity or that? How do I negotiate? And so imagine those that really need. And so to complicate things, it's the journey's not linear. You know, you start with an interview, you muster up the courage to decide to apply, and receive offers. It's just a whole mess. And people just really want to feel equipped for the journey. And so we're focused on being a trusted partner and a helpful guide by supporting, inspiring, and empowering the journey. So that's the ambition. That's how we want to show up in people's lives. So we aim to provide confidence in our brand in every step of the way. So just a little bit of our story, and I'm going to zip through this part a bit. But we started with 2 different tracks for our design system. First is Janice, and it's establishing a foundation that allows us to build for change. So this was what Indeed looked like a few years ago, and we started by making these very subtle changes, not a whole lot, just trying to like clean it up, like very little change. And what we found was that the results qualitatively and quantitatively were lukewarm. So you make some lukewarm, really, really safe bets that didn't pan out, and so we went a little bit further. And we introduced Janice, which really isn't that radical, but for Indeed was monumental, you know? And we played with like the colors, lightening it up a bit, and we're kind of playing with them back now, introducing iconography, going back to Helvetica, a card system. All of this was really, really new and different. Illustration, and then email. And the goal was really increasing trust, broadening appeal, and neutral performance. And so it's really, really important, you know, as we're talking about like building love and how that needs to happen internally. For us, it meant really, really keeping an eye on how things were performing. You know, getting to neutral performance actually is no easy feat, because we would launch lots of tests. So over 66 million users, 100 experiments over the course of 2 quarters. Anytime that we launched anything, it would turn red, and then we would just do this quick shuck and jive to try to get it back to green. But yeah, just letting everybody know that, hey, we are committed to like making sure that the business wins. Like that's really, really important. Your priorities are our priorities. So then the second piece is this brand system piece of it. So evolving our identity. So in a competitive landscape that's constantly shifting, the best experience will win. And so this is where the experience matters, and preference kind of leads out a little bit more than performance, you know? And so the stakes are higher. And so we're the #1 job site in the world, but most people still don't yet know us. And so as we step into the next iteration of our design system, we're really going to be focused on how we're building trust. And then we kind of think of it in 2 different ways. The first is coherence and velocity was our foundation. And then the next phase is distinctiveness. So our first design system has been adopted across over 100+ different products. And our president, you know, this is where you get real. Like I said, it takes time to build trust and show that you really care about the business, and to have our president attest to how our products are empirically better now because of our design system, that we've evolved the aesthetic, and that we're actually better at helping people get jobs. Illustrations are adding personality and a human touch to the work. We simplified our job search so that it's a little bit easier. We've streamlined finding candidates. And we've helped top brands do a better job of like telling their stories on our platform. So what's next? For our design system, we're just getting started. You know, I think it's really, really important for everyone in the design system industry to just know that it's a long game. You know, I think everybody thinks that like, oh, 2 years. You know, it's really important to celebrate like every win as you're going. So for us, we feel like we've just built up a lot of momentum and we're getting started. Can anyone recognize what this really, really jagged screenshot is? Ms. Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. So I have a 3-year-old that is obsessed with Miss Frizzle. And I was watching this episode. I don't know if you guys remember, but there were a lot of terrible puns, like awful puns. This one in particular is her best friend, Miss Molly. Wait for it, guys. Kuehl. Okay. And basically, they're at this car wash. She's getting her car washed. And she talks about the properties that make the soap clean the car, or the properties of the molecules that communicate the slipperiness of the oil, but that the molecules are what add this definition to the groupings of atoms. And so when you take like Brad Frost's system, you can see for us, we're still at very much an atomic level, and we're working towards adding more distinctiveness and definition. Molecules onward, I think, is where you get it. And as you far as you go, like pages, you see more expression of your brand that way. And for our culture, we've always focused on our customers and putting them first, but we don't always ship things that are customer-centered. So how do you make innovation a habit? How do you make building love into all of your experiences just like a part of the way that the business gets done? And so this is just your standard design thinking chart here, where you start with the human need, you talk about what's viable and what aligns with your business needs, and then what's feasible from a technical aspect. And so folding this into everyday work and really thinking about design thinking as a growth mindset, and just honestly changing the way that we work, so that innovation isn't just a separate lab or a separate team, but that it's a part of the way that we do business. So, and also living our principles. We spent almost let's say 3 months. So with a team of, such a large team, we had 89 team members join a Trello board. We had Slacks, we had wiki pages to put together. I know this is a gnarly slide, but like all of our principles, completing the initial circles that I provided. So we started with the why we do what we do, but then this is what we do and how we do it. And so connecting, so we create a unified platform that connects everybody, supporting that job seeker or that talent seeker, understanding how do we understand more deeply how people work and what they need, clarify. I mean, there's so much anxiety in the whole process on both sides, so how do we make that next step clearer? Crafting for credibility, how do we earn trust and really make it easy for us and for our users to navigate our experiences. And then ethical practice every day. That's again like taking responsibility of the fact that we are global, and at our scale, everything that we do matters. And what Chris shares is really great. He said, let's just take an adversarial approach to bias. Just assume that we're getting it wrong. Assume that we don't have it right, and that it's actually a bug, and every day we should just be working towards fixing the bugs. And then lastly, always iterating, always refining, always improving. So some final thoughts on love. I actually spent a lot of time, as Nathan suggested or mentioned before, in Munich with an awesome team from different companies. And when we sat down and chatted about it, like, what are your key problems? What are the things you're struggling with? It was all the same stuff, We focus too much on the short term and not the long term. What about ethics? What about growth? What about strategic alignment? You think you're all alone, but here are all these companies that are all asking the same questions. And it makes sense because we're all a little over 10 years in our awkward teenage years, just trying to figure it out. Some are further along than others, but we're all navigating how design transformation happens within our companies. So, on that note, a little bit of encouragement as we talk about love. Love is patient. With design systems, it's definitely not a marathon. It's a marathon and not a sprint, that this is a long game and it is a labor of love. And love is kind. We support everyone through change. Internally, change is so hard, you know? How do you help engineers work in a different way? How do you help PMs think strategically and embrace a new definition of analytical? How do you make inroads with marketing and so that they're comfortable with you talking about brand and that you're comfortable with marketing talking about user experience? You know, how do you really, really build those relationships up through empathy? And then it does not envy when other teams get a lot more love than you do in the beginning and they don't understand your value at first. You have to hang in there, and the onus is on us to educate, to facilitate, to help others understand, to speak the language, to be that bridge, to be that connector, to be that catalyst for our companies. It always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, never fails. I love this because there's a resiliency that we need to have, a resilience when we go through this. You know, Google's transformation, that was 8 years. Intuit 7 years. Like I said, well, this is a long game. It's a long game. And so even for my team, they look back and they're like, oh, it's been 2 years. We wanted to do X, Y, Z. And I have to remind them, we're on track. We're 2 years in and we're killing it and we're on track. And so there's a perseverance that we need to have as we do this work. And lastly, building love is everyone's responsibility. And so when we start with our purpose, we start with why we show up, it matters because it lights a fire up in everybody. You know, if we didn't start with what we thought Indeed could be, you know, and say, hey, we've noticed we're a little transactional, actually. We could be more human, you know. Are we exactly where we want to be yet? No, but we're going to get there. And we've been able to move as fast as we have by setting a vision for where we could be. So starting with why we exist, tapping into the mission that everybody already loves, and really, really beating that drum pretty hard. I mean, I think everybody thought I was only a brand designer. I think people probably still think that because I only talk about brand, not only, but mostly talk about brand and love because that's where it needs to start. That's where the revolution happens and charts the course further. So that's what I will leave with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Wonderful talk. So let's start the conversation in a practical way with, you're into design systems, you're at a design system conference. Is it important that a design system creates its own identity? And if so, why is that important?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is mission critical that it does create its own identity. I also consider the progress of that, knowing that it starts at an atomic level. There's these little decisions that make a really big impact, like the roundedness of your buttons. So, I mean, this is where like the details of the love come into play. I think that you can be distinctive in all of the little details, knowing that you're building towards something bigger.
As you've worked on the design systems at Indeed, I want to relate that slide where you talked about Indeed's customers and their most stressful life moments. Design systems have lives. They're born, they live, they grow, they do die. And so can you talk about some of the most stressful moments that your design system has encountered at Indeed?
Mm-hmm. I would say there are two really painful points. One, starting to begin with. That's just always...
How so?
Well, it's like, you know, for us, it was like 14 years of this is the way we roll and this is how we do things. And trying anything new it's just, sometimes it's a bear because it just is. And so I would say the new point, like where you're just starting out, you're just talking about the value, you're just trying to promote it. And then the other painful point is when you're outgrowing it, which is kind of where we are now with our system, where it needs to mature, and we've kind of hit the limitations of where it can be in its nascent stage and wanting to ramp up. And
what kind of limitations?
Like limitations with like not having enough components, limitations with how how, because it's not as mature, because we don't have as like a robust library of assets. Like I feel like if we had photography, if we had just more, it would make it easier.
Awesome. So I really geeked out from your slide that had the what we do and how we do it. It had 7 columns. It had a principle per column. In fact, it maybe had multiple principles column. It really spoke to an architect's mind of how to think about at a high level your mission. And just before that, you showed this Trello slide with the sliding back and forth and 80 plus people engaged in the single board. I'm curious, in what ways did you take those principles and have them seep into Trello and Slack and conversation? How did you get them to seep into everything you do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. For us, firstly, it meant involving everyone. So with all of those different offices, we had workshops. So we have an amazing content strategist that literally held design principles workshops in each location. And so with everybody participating in it, it made it theirs. It wasn't a top-down leadership said, these are our principles, and so we've got them and we're stuck with them. It was actually, we created these principles together. And leadership, we kind of just took a look at it and helped to consolidate or amplify, one that might have been buried, like ethics, we put that to the top level. So it was really nice for it to be very grassroots, get everyone's engagement, and then they become like promoters of it. And so when I was in Austin visiting, someone mentioned, he whips the principles out when he's having conversations with PMs or other partners to say, actually, this is important to us. It's a part of our principles. So we're just getting to the part of designing posters around them and putting them up. But because it's already in the culture, it's not just a frivolous poster. It's not one that no one will recognize or appreciate.
I love that. The posters come last. They don't come first, or they come later at least. You talked about the next stage of growth in Aurora and its focus on distinctiveness. Are you already engaged in things to craft how it's distinctive, and how do you make choices around what to focus on as distinctions?
That's a really, really great question. So some of the questions that we ask ourselves is, we think about even as simple as color, which is something that I go to all the time. But with such a saturated market around blue, like we lead with blue, like is that the color that best represents us today? There's so many choices that were made initially with the brand that, it's just worth revisiting. So when we talk about distinctiveness, we think about color, we think about type, we think about iconography. I feel like this was true for your presentation as well. Like for design systems, you start with those 3 core things and then kind of branch out from there, and then illustration and photography. So for us, we want to get to the full picture a little bit faster so that we can be more distinctive.
So we live in an impatient world, and as design systems practitioners, we have a kit of parts that we hope other people use, and you've focused or you emphasized a look towards the long game, the long term, to have patience with that. And so how do you have conversations with people that are really only focused on 3 months of a roadmap or 6 months of a roadmap? They see what's in front of them, and those are their priorities, and they're cranking. Yeah. How do you blend in this notion of a long term and being patient for it?
Yeah. It's a really great question. So for us, I think that's why you always have to double track. So we've been working on Aurora since day one. So Aurora and Janice, we were working on both of them at the same time. And so we were always like keeping an eye towards where we could be and pushing things further, and then making choices for the day-to-day that could enable that team and unblock that team. So we felt like Janice would solved for what people needed in the first year and a half, and then Aurora is kind of picking up our next segment.
Where you need them to go. And so speaking of where we need to go, this is the last question, and it's a personal one. I'm a stats guy. I have a master's in statistics. That's where my education and thinking comes from an analytical bent. And you phrased more than once, you need to embrace the new analytical. What does that mean?
I don't know. For us, it means every available insight. So a new look on that is not only looking at the numbers. It's also considering what we don't, because I guess what I'm trying to say is the quantitative side of things are really critical, are really important. They tell you what people do, but they may not tell you why people do it. And so you need the whole picture of quant and qual together, and consider that as being analytical is what I'm trying to suggest, that redefining what it means to be analytical as something that embraces, as a practice that embraces both qual and quant.
I love that because as a statistician, I draw a strong contrast with math, which is the study of certainty and truth, and stats is the study of uncertainty and how we develop inferences and perceptions and try to get down to the root trigger of causality. And so I really appreciated your talk. Let's give Kim a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.